which we will move to our top 25. As the top 25, pretty interesting. Here at your Sports Outpost, we have Indiana at number 1, Ohio State at number 2. The Buckeyes had a bye week. Indiana absolutely destroyed UCLA. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But here is the results throughout the whole top 25. We're going to split it up in half and go through it here. We only had 3 misses, which is not too bad. We'll take it. As it was actually a pretty much an overall good week for us. This is the bottom half. We'll start with Navy on the road against... Oh, no, actually, no. At home against FAU. Navy was favored by multiple possessions, 14.5 points. Ends up only being 42-32, so they don't cover. But it wins a win. They continue to be undefeated. One of the last undefeated teams. It would be them, BYU, Georgia Tech, Ohio State, Indiana, as the remaining undefeated teams here in the FBS left. And we'll see who falls next weekend. As Virginia is the next game up to talk about. They got out alive there in Chapel Hill. There's another one where the Cavaliers don't cover, and it was a nice fight there on the road for, again, Virginia. 17-16, an overtime win. I was not expecting this. I thought they would have been able to run the ball a little bit more on the Tar Heels, but it looks like Bill Belichick somewhat might have improved. Kind of week after week. Last week it was a weeknight game against Cal. This time around, they're hosting Virginia, who's ranked, and at least they pushed it to overtime, making it a game there. Maybe it is changing some of the boosters' mind and getting rid of him early on. As we continue through the games, we have Houston heading over to Tempe and hands the Sun Devils their first loss at home in, I think, about 10 games. I think it was the streak going for Arizona State. It might have been a little bit less than that. Their home winning streak is snapped. The Cougars were up 24-0, I believe, at halftime. Arizona State tried to mount some kind of comeback, just was not ready to go. And this is kind of the things that we were kind of being hinted by from Kenny Dillingham going into the season. He was talking about how this team was just, they might be a 500 ball club, and it's a little bit not severe as 500, but close enough to where you're like, okay, kind of, we were already getting the signs that Arizona State, not that they weren't going to be good, but they were going to fall in some games, and it's kind of surprising to see them fall here at home, as they've been, last year they beat BYU, Utah, Mississippi State. I know it's just Mississippi State. This past season, last week they beat Texas Tech, but against Houston, who has been a pretty decent team so far this season. Their only loss, I believe, is against Texas Tech, and they barely got out alive. That was like one of their closer games there in Corvallis against Oregon State. But other than that, they've been pretty consistent, and now they shown it to us with a nice road win against Arizona State. Texas also gets out alive, just like Virginia, on the road. There in Starkville against Mississippi State. This game looked like the Longhorns were not going to end up with the W, but somehow, some way, they figured it out. I believe Arch Manning might have picked up an injury. I didn't see any kind of news reports or any kind of follow-up on that, as he kind of left the game, I believe, in overtime there. Niblett, who had a punt return against Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl for the Red River rivalry, well, he does it again and helps send this game to overtime, 38-38. And then Texas at the end there, just a little bit better than Mississippi State, who's just been struggling and capitulated there at the end. Technically, if I'm not mistaken, the math is right on Texas covering, because they're only favored by 7 points, and 45-38. Well, I think the difference is 7 points. So that kind of prediction being set for the Lions kind of comes true. As we keep moving, Tennessee, they head over to Lexington, Kentucky, and beat the Wildcats 56-34. It's just so weird. Last week Texas goes to Lexington. They win in overtime, but Tennessee just absolutely has no problems handling business against, again, the Wildcats. Yeah, it is what it is on there with those interesting matchups as you kind of look at the score lines week by week. And I would say Kentucky maybe holds on to Stoops. I wouldn't at the end of the day, because there's going to be a lot of like moving of the chess pieces. You definitely don't want to get left behind in terms of coaching talent. So maybe this is the kind of thing at the end of the season. Even if he beats Louisville, I would say Kentucky probably at the end of the season gets rid of Stoops. For Tennessee, on the other hand, they are technically still alive and they have a lot to play for. They got to definitely run the table in terms of not making the SEC championship, but possibly sneaking into one of those last spots in the playoff. They obviously have that game against Vanderbilt at the end of the season. If they can win that just helps them out on their resume to the committee and possibly opening or leaving the door open for the Volunteers. A game I was very disappointed to see the result in. Washington hosts Illinois, and they beat the Fighting Illini 42-25. Yes, we risk it for the biscuit. This is the one we went against the grain with, and we were proven wrong, unfortunately. Illinois, they just kept it close, but the Huskies just pulled away there in the second half. And Washington, they just been having some bad weeks. They went on the road against Michigan not too long ago. They lose there. They had Ohio State at home, kind of held the Buckeyes to not blowing them completely out. But they host Illinois, who, only losses before this was against Indiana and Ohio State. And I thought they would have got the job done here. But they'd have to go back and look to see if there's any injuries that might have got picked up for the Fighting Illini. But we'll talk about it mostly or more on Monday and Wednesday if there's anything coming out of that. Cincinnati, they hosted Baylor and they beat the Waco Bears 41-20. Cincy, as a result of this game, will now be hosting. Oh no, they'll not be hosting. They're going to be on the road. They're in Salt Lake City, where it'll be where game day is. So the Bearcats doing a good enough job to get a lot of attention here. Now they'll have some national recognition, and if they can pull off that game there in, again, Salt Lake City, which is going to be a tough one. Not a lot of people win there at Sam Eccles, I believe is what the stadium is called. It's a big opportunity for the Bearcats. One big opportunity that was taken this past weekend, Memphis upsets USF 34-31. They beat the Bulls and have a nice bounce back win. I can only imagine now if they beat UAB where they would be in like the AP poll. They'd be probably pretty high. For us, they definitely would be in the driver's seat. I think they are now technically in the driver's seat, but they still have to win the American at the end of the season, which means they most likely will have a rematch against South Florida, and that will most likely also be at home. But they got to make sure they win out. If I'm not mistaken, they still have to play Tulane. So the Green Wave will be a big wall that they will have to pass through just to host that, again, American Conference Championship. But nice bounce back win for the Tigers there. Keep moving to Miami. Hosting Stanford, they beat the Nerds of Palo Alto 42-7. This game was a little close in the first quarter, and then Miami just pulled away. No contest really from the Cardinal, but as expected, the fire there just cannot continue to flame. Obviously, they got the big win against Florida State last week. But this time around, when they play a pretty decent opponent in the Hurricanes, they're not the worst. It still is the ACC, but they obviously don't get the job done and lose 42-7 again. As we move to that top half of the top 25, where we technically went perfect, but not for the whole of our top 25. We start with Georgia Tech hosting Syracuse. We knew the issues that the Orange have been dealing with, and that is the lack of a decent starting quarterback. And the scoreline shows 41-16. The Yellow Jackets were favored by 18 going into the weekend, or at least the last time I checked. And yeah, they more than covered there. Yeah, Syracuse unfortunately falls apart. And we'll see if they even are bowl eligible, because it seems like everyone that they're playing now are just blowing them out. And we'll see if Fran Brown can get his Orange to recover. Continuing through, Texas Tech hosting Oklahoma State, another one that was expected to be a blowout. It definitely was, 42-0. The Red Raiders bounced back after losing to Arizona State on the road. They play the worst team in the Big 12, and that is the Cowboys out of Stillwater. And yeah, 42-0. That is a nice big goose egg there. Continuing through, we have a top 10 matchup here at your Sports Outpost. Missouri versus Vanderbilt. Vandy gets the job done. We did a in-depth review of that in the beginning of the stream. All that we can really add to it is big moments the Commodores come through on, and Missouri unfortunately have to deal with a quarterback injury for the remainder of the season. So we'll see how they recoup throughout their remaining games. We'll move to Ole Miss going on the road to Norman, Oklahoma, and handle the Sooners 34-26. This is why we had Oklahoma at number 23. They just got back into the top 25 this past weekend. And we were proven right of them being, I don't want to say fraudulent. Obviously the John Mateer injury was kind of something you don't want to see, but it was kind of inevitable. We saw in this game that they were just too reliant on their transfer quarterback. There's absolutely no running game for Oklahoma. And this was kind of the same case that we saw last year with a different offensive coordinator, actually, for the Sooners. But things definitely are not changing offensively. They're completely over-reliant on their quarterback. And it kind of, unfortunately, at the end of the day, he's kind of the thing that you point your finger at of like why they lost. And that just needs to change. They need to establish a better running game. I know they hit a home run on the ground for this one, but Ole Miss was just better. They got a safety. Actually, their defense, if I'm not mistaken, they scored a couple points. Not just that safety. I think they had a pick six. And we're setting up their offense with some really great field position. Trinidad Chablis, he really showed up and showed out in this game. I wonder where he will end up there in like trophies, awards at the end of the season. Probably a finalist in a lot of them because he's just having a game. And Oklahoma, before halftime, was already giving up 200 yards, and that was where they were averaging on defense for a whole game. And you just knew that the Sooners were running into an opponent they really haven't faced. The Michigan game, Michigan was kind of like in a low gear setting. They weren't even opening up their offense. They lose to Texas, whose defense handled business there against the Sooners in the Cotton Bowl. They really haven't played anyone this season, and now they have the remainder of the year where it's going to be a tough stretch to see if they have any kind of chance, because they definitely need to win out. But are they going to win out? Most likely not. They're going to pick up another L or two by the end of the season. It'll be a little bit closer to what we predicted there for, unfortunately, Oklahoma. But Ole Miss, they get the job done, and Lane Kiffin keeps that door open for a college football spot later this year. BYU, they go on the road to Ames, Iowa to take on the Cyclones, and they beat Iowa State 41-27. This game in the first half was one of the games I kind of glued myself to the TV. I watched this one over the Vandy, Missouri game because I knew I'm going to watch the highlights later, even though I probably should have watched that game because it was just as good. This one, BYU, they were just struggling there in the first half. On top of that, they lost LJ Martin, their star running back, who's an absolute hammer for that running game for the Cougs. But the team out of Provo gets the job done at the end of the day, and that was because of their defense, who really is the best defense, I would say, in the Big 12. I've been saying this all season long. I kind of hinted to it in the preseason with our preseason videos, and I'm pretty much spot on. I mean, like, when you have interceptions that are setting up great field position, kind of changing momentum, not allowing Rocco Beck to really get any kind of rhythm going, this secondary just made up huge difference. And on top of that, they have a great rush attack there to get inside the pocket when Iowa State was, trying to overpass it, unfortunately, at the end. And yeah, that's why BYU gets the job done. I think it was a little disrespectful to see them below Miami. I would think if they actually were on the same field as the Hurricanes, I would take BYU all day, no questions about it. And Bear Bachmeier still continues to carry a lot of defenders as a true freshman into the end zone, as he did it again this past weekend. And if I'm not mistaken, he had the game leading touchdown on that drive. We keep moving now into the top 5. We have Oregon hosting Wisconsin. It was a very surprising scoreline, as it was predicted to be a blowout. I thought it was going to be an absolute murder there in Eugene, but Oregon still gets the job done. But it was only 21-7. Dude, they absolutely do not cover. Going into the weekend, the last time I checked, it was 31.5 points in favor of the Ducks. This one I have to go back and watch and see what was the issue. But Wisconsin, with Luke Fickell, I mean, he's basically coaching to save his job. I don't think the result here is going to be doing that, as they score their first points since, I think, September, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. They haven't scored any points in the whole month of October until this meeting against the Oregon Ducks. They kept it close. Oregon does get the job done. Just a little concerning, but when we also think about it, this was like a very similar game in Madison in 2024, where the Ducks had to, have a real fight against the Badgers, and that's what it was this past weekend. But again, Oregon gets the job done. Alabama also in a close fight there in Columbia, South Carolina, against the Gamecocks. At one point, it looked like the fans that were attending and were Gamecock fans were ready to storm the field and have a massive upset, which would have been the first top 10 win since 2019. But South Carolina comes up short, 29-22 against the Crimson Tide, who found just so many different ways to win this game. Jeremiah Bernard, I think it was a jet sweep, as they use him in multiple ways to get him the ball to make plays for this Alabama offense. He's the best player truly for Alabama this season, as he's been just carrying the load, getting open for Ty Simpson in the crucial moments. Then on top of that, he's just a great Swiss Army knife, as he can really do it all. And he continues to do it and helps Alabama win 29-22. It just sucks for South Carolina. It looked like they were really going to get this win here. And yeah, they come up short. Just thinking about celebrating a little too much there, not just getting the job done. Texas A&M versus LSU, the absolute battering in Death Valley, as the Tigers fall 49-25. We saw backups in this game. LSU just made terrible halftime adjustments. They were up at halftime, and yeah, they definitely don't get the job done. And as a result, Brian Kelly is out there in Baton Rouge as the head coach of LSU. But not surprised whatsoever. We knew this day was going to come. We just didn't know when. And Texas A&M getting their first win there in Baton Rouge for the first time since 1994. The final game to talk about, we got Indiana hosting UCLA there in Bloomington. This game, yeah, it looked like UCLA was going to put up a fight. They had a fake punt that wasn't successful there in the first half. And then basically it was all Hoosiers after that. They really put it on the Bruins and kind of end the honeymoon period for Coach Skipper. and Jerry Neuheisel, the offensive coordinator. Just when you come up against a really good team in the Hoosiers, yeah, you're just gonna have a bad time. And they had their way against UCLA and ultimately win 56-6. What a belt the cheeks result that was. Again, here is the top 25 in those games. Once again, we only missed 3. A little disappointed for that Memphis USF game. Thought the Bulls were going to pull out there, and they were up early as well. Washington, Illinois, that was the most one I was disappointed with seeing that result. And then Houston on the road there against Arizona State gets a